see-through ZoomX midsole, carbon fiber plate. The Next Percent was my favorite shoe by far for marathon racing. It still might be. I'm trying the second version here. We'll see how it goes. So as I mentioned before, they have more of a Flyknit upper on the Next Percent 2 as opposed to that vapor weave, I guess they called it. So it's kind of like a Flyknit, but as I said, it's a little bit different. I have a pair of the 4% here. You can see it's not as see-through. You can't feel it, of course, but it's more like a sock, more stretchy, kind of wraps around your foot with a lot more give than I think the Next Percent 2 has the feeling of right now. So you can see you can't see through it as much. They put more kind of perforations in it to help with breathability, whereas the material itself now in the Next Percent 2 clearly has holes where you'd see right through to your sock. If we compare that to the Next Percent from last year, the Next Percent was, see-through, but it wasn't Flyknit at all. It wasn't really a cotton material. The Vapor Weave is actually a mix of TPU and TPE plastics, so it was designed to repel water. But one of the things that I did find is if it was a really warm day during the summer, if I wore the shoe, I could feel the water pooling inside of the shoe. So if it was 90 degrees and humid in Manhattan last year or 2019 while I was training for the race, it did get kind of like you were stepping through puddles. And it could have been a completely dry day. It was just sweat, so that wasn't really a pleasant experience. But I have to say, for race day when it's cooler, in a fall marathon, this was my go-to. I really like the way it fit my foot. Even with a slightly wider foot, I'm able to go true to size. It kind of molds and conforms to your foot. It worked out just fine. So I really did like this Vapor Weave upper. But again, during a warm day, was not very breathable, was designed to be water repellent and kind of keep water off of it, but I felt it kept it in the shoe as well. If we take one more look at the Next Percent 2, I'll actually pull out everything in here so you can see just how see-through it is. If you're familiar, again, it's much more like the Atom Knit. I don't know if you can see my hand, or maybe if I move and use the light from the window, you can see right through the shoe. The Atom Knit was kind of a steamed and cooled Flyknit, I believe, so they could stretch it out in a way that made it more water resistant. Obviously made it much more see-through, but was still strong enough to kind of withstand training and racing, and was supposed to last a long time. So to me, this looks like Atom Knit. Again, they don't call it Atom Knit on their website, but it's a very different version of a Flyknit, again, sort of stretched and made more breathable. It does feel like it has some water resistance to it. It shouldn't hold as much sweat as the original Flyknit. Air is going to flow right through here. Your foot is going to breathe. Has kind of a padding around the heel here to help hold your foot in. It is a little bit stiff, so they put some kind of cardboard or plastic or harder material in there to kind of form around your heel cup. But otherwise it has the complete identical sole of the Next Percent, of course, from the Next Percent 1. It's pretty much the same thing, just a different upper. So I'm excited about the upper. It is a little heavier. I do still, like I said, for racing in the fall when it's cooler, I love the Next Percent 1. This one probably has a little bit too many miles on it to race in this fall. I'll probably go with the Next Percent 2, but we'll see how it feels. We'll do some test runs in it, and if I don't like it or I don't think it's as good for me as the Next Percent 1 was, we'll have to pick up another pair of these, which you can find them for around retail. Even on some sneaker reselling sites like StockX, you could find a pair of Next Percent for around $230, which I believe really isn't much more than you used to pay anyway from Nike. So lots of options there, but obviously very different upper, very similar midsoles, very similar sole. So that's what we got. I also have a pair of Zoom Fly Flyknit here. This was not necessarily designed to be a racing shoe, but was one of the earlier Flyknit material shoes. It does have a plate in it. It's actually a carbon fiber plate, but it was more of a trainer. Could be used on race day. Actually one of my favorite shoes back a while ago for kind of tempo days and training a little bit faster. But you can see this does clearly have the Flyknit material, the perforations to help with breathability, was not necessarily see-through, much like the 4%. These are essentially the same material, just had a little bit different of a sole and build. They were a little heavier. They weren't as optimized for racing like the 4% were. But as you could see on the Next Percent 2, it's not exactly Flyknit. It's more like the Atom Knit from the Alpha Fly, but they're not calling it Atom Knit, so I'm not sure exactly what the difference is, but it does look very similar and feels very similar as well. One more thing that I was looking at before is the very interesting laces on the Next Percent 2. You can really see here, it's kind of a ribbed, wavy design. I just tried tying them myself, and it kind of catches the material, so if you go to tie it, I'm assuming maybe this is to help so your shoe doesn't untie during a race. It would be harder for it to just simply slip through itself if it's tied in a knot. We'll definitely have to see how that goes. I've heard mixed opinions about the laces so far. I could always throw on the laces from the Next Percent 1 since it's the identical shoe in shape and size, just a different material. I could always throw on a regular pair of laces from the Next Percent 1 with kind of a Volt greenish yellow lace on the white. Might look kind of nice anyway, but we'll see. It's no real differences other than the feeling of it and that ribbed material. So you could always switch back and forth, but we'll see how those laces go. The last thing I'll say here are these two shoes are, pretty much feel the same. They both feel paper light. Neither one of them I could tell you felt heavier than the other one at all, even though the Next Percent 2 is supposed to be a little bit heavier than the first version. So to the feel, no differences at all. I think to me the weight is really going to be negligible, and even some other lighter runners, people who are running really fast down closer to 100 pounds, they still seem to prefer the Next Percent 2, or at least have been trying out the Next Percent 2, so that hasn't really swayed them away from choosing the Next Percent 2 over the Next Percent 1 for the few 0.3 ounce difference I think that it is. Still a very light shoe. It still feels like nothing in the hand, so still a very exciting shoe. Still probably top of the world, I think, for me as far as the best shoes to run races in if you want to do the best for yourself. But there are a lot of other options out there, so we'll continue to see, and like I said, I'll test it out and see how it feels on foot. So one other thing I want to take a look at here is just kind of the fit for, again, somebody with a wider foot. You can see on the Next Percent 1, I kind of get this bunching here because it really is filled out entirely by my foot. You can kind of see here in the tongue line that it really just barely has enough material to reach. I'm not wearing socks, just so you can kind of see my foot there. There was barely enough tongue when it was loose. When I tied it up, it was just fine. It would cover my foot fully. It didn't create any hot spots or any issues, but it is just barely kind of getting my foot in there. My foot overhangs here a lot. Like I said, though, I love this shoe. It fit well. It fit snug. It was great for race day. There really actually was plenty of toe room. My toe ended here in a size 12.5, which is what I wear generally for any other training shoe or just even an everyday shoe. On the Next Percent 2, pretty much the same length, really the same shape overall, but I think I do have just a little bit more room to start out because the new Flyknit here that they're using is a little bit more forgiving. So you can see there's a little bit more room in the tongue. It's not so stretched out, and especially when I knot it down, I think it will fit pretty much the same in the end, but you just have a little bit extra tongue because this material is a little bit more stretchy. It is able to pull a little bit further around my foot. Just an interesting kind of comparison where if you do have a little bit of a wider foot, again, I'm not like a double E or anything super wide, but if you found that you were having a little bit of an issue like me with the tongue, not having enough space for a wider foot, you should kind of see that go away here with the second version. The only thing I would say is if it was uncomfortable or just too narrow overall that you couldn't even wear the shoe, where it was just uncomfortable, you felt pain points, that's not going to change in the second version. It's only going to give you a tiny bit more room for the tongue if you have a slightly wide foot like I do.